Okay, I am Tim Mantz, Chair of the College of Business here at Argosy. Many of you know me, a few of you don't. And I spent 25 years on Madison Avenue. And my background's a lot of big national advertising. And in all, I think in all fields of study, terms are misused. And one of my pet peeves is branding. People throw around the term branding all the time, and they have no concept of what it really means, and it's used the wrong way, and it's and there's really a lot to it. A lot of people don't realize it's really a science. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. And if any time you feel like you have a question or you want to ask something or say something or a comment, just speak up. We're very casual here. So branding. If there's a quick overview, branding works a lot the same way Match.com does. And we'll get into details about that. But just think of Match.com and how they talk about what they do. They match you up on 50-some elements of your personality, right? So in some ways, branding has elements of speed dating too, because you make decisions pretty quick. Daniel Kahneman has a book out now, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. I don't know if any of you guys have read it, but it has a lot to do with about how this, how your brain, your fast part of your brain, system one, the psychologists call that, or Kahneman calls it, and works almost instantaneously without you knowing it. And a lot of this stuff, whether it decides whether it fits or not, and that's what alignment and congruency are about, happens almost without you knowing it. Okay? Now, marketing, and this is an old joke. This is an old joke in marketing, right? So there's marketing, there's advertising, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. Public relations, you get somebody else to tell them, right? And branding, they know. They know what you are, and you've been defined. And there's an issue in politics that holds true for that they stole from marketing, where they say frame the issue before it frames you. And that's absolutely true. As a product, as a service, you have to tell your own story. You have to frame who you are. And if you don't, someone will do it for you. Okay? So this is Tim Mantz's definition. Okay? Marketing are all the aspects of the company that make sales easier. Okay? There are some other definitions that get thicker, but they boil down to this. They boil down to that at the end of the day. Okay? Ground rules before you go on in marketing. Everything in marketing stated in terms of the consumer. Right? That means I'm talking to the consumer. I have to understand what you want, not what I do. You don't care what I do. We all don't like people who go out and go, I do this, I do that, right? How many of you have seen commercials where somebody just stands up quickly and starts talking at you, and you have no relationship with, you shut them off like that, right? You shut them down. It's the same thing. You can't get away with that. David Ogilvy Mather, one of the largest ad agencies in the world, and my first job was with them for many years. It's all about the consumer. And here, Leo Burnett said the same thing. Leo Burnett was Chicago's big guy. He did Tony the Tiger, Morris the Cat, Charlie the Tuna. I mean, lots of big products and big brands came out of Leo Burnett. And Leo Burnett knew it's all about them, right? It's all about me as a consumer. And this happens too often, right? Write new and improved on the box, kick it back out, right? So a huge concept in marketing. And again, this is, a lot of this stuff is taken from a lot of other doctoral research. So you may see illustration out of a book or something that you've read before. I've compiled them all. This is a key concept. Chernoff talks a lot about this, but people started talking about this. Rosser Reeves started back in 1959 at the Reality Advertising. He first touched on this. And no one's buying what you're selling. No woman ever bought lipstick. You don't want lipstick, right? You want beauty, self-esteem, you want a certain look, you want to fit in with a group. People don't buy coffee at Starbucks. You ever see people from Starbucks, they hold that cup up here, right? And they walk out many times the logo facing out. They're very proud, right? It's about self-esteem, right? I got a luxury product, basically, sophistication. I deserve this. It's like a reward. You hold it up here. You see people coming out of other coffee, Tully's, they're down here, right? McDonald's is, no, I'm kidding. So, right? So the goal, and this is the goal of where marketing is today. The goal of where marketing is today is not to have to resort to selling. If you have to resort to selling, you've fallen down somewhere. Okay? You want consumers to choose to buy. Right? I don't have to sell Louis Vuitton bags very hard to certain women. Right? Now, you know, if Doug's wife wants to buy one, you may have to sell it hard to Doug. Right? But for that wife to plop down $2,000 or $3,000 for a Louis Vuitton handbag, easy, right? Christian Louboutin shoes, right? A Porsche for many guys, right? There are things that don't really need to be sold. They've done a good job of defining who they are, right? So this is a typical problem. People spend months, right? And we got a logo and a tagline. And I see this all the time, right? Companies come around and they've got, wow, we spent all this money, all this time, and we got a new logo and a tagline. And your company, your product, your offering is essentially the same. What kind of effect do you think that'll have? In my mind, that's almost like saying the consumer's stupid. And you're not going to last long doing that. And this happens all the time. You know, one of the basic things when you take a business degree, they tell you to under-promise, over-deliver, right? Many marketing campaigns over-deliver and don't understand the capabilities or where they fit, okay? Huge problem. If you promise things you can't deliver, it's a good way to go out of business. Because with the internet and the way word of mouth will spread, it'll kill you quickly. What happens many times is that companies want to talk to everybody. And I can't tell you how many times when I was working on Madison Avenue that VPs of marketing from a major brand that had $1 billion in spending would say, my wife really thinks, and we're going, oh my God, we have all this science involved in this, and now we're going by your wife's gut feeling, right? Who's you know, an accountant. And not that their wife isn't a wonderful person, but or other times they want to talk to everybody. And in reality, you want to talk to your customers, your niche, right? And you want to talk to them very separately from the people who aren't your customers, because you will get different information. You're never going to have something that's everything for everybody. You should focus on niches. And if you think of the companies that focused on niches, Apple focused on a niche. Microsoft did not. Who's worth more money today? Apple. Surprising, isn't it? If you think about athletic shoes, Nike did it. Nike focused on runners first, right? And their whole campaign is about get up off your butt. Many companies are living off a product whose life is over. The MP3 player was invented by Sony. Sony had the Walkman back in the early 90s when they invented the MP3 player. They didn't want to compete with themselves. So they sold the MP3 technology to everyone and their brother. And no one put it all together till Apple did and came up with the Apple Store and whole thing. And they really branded it, did a good design job. But Sony missed huge market by not moving on to the next generation. Okay? And branding's one of those things that is throughout an organization. And it has to be. If you don't live it and breathe it, your customers will know pretty quick. And this is huge. Execution is the key. People say, well, you know, you're a marketer. You just say the brand. The brand is worth a lot of money. Ask Wall Street. Wall Street will tell you 60% of Coca-Cola's value is the brand. 60% of Nike's value is the brand. Wall Street backs this up. Here we're going to get into branding, what it is, what it's not. Branding, this is where it comes from. Years and years and years ago, I've heard different states, but let's go with Texas. In Texas, cows used to break out of the pasture and end up in someone else's field, and my cows would be in Wayne's field, and if Wayne's a nice guy, he'd give them back. If not, he'd say, no, those are my cows, and fix the fence and keep them on his side, right? So people started branding, marking the cows, right? So you could tell them apart, right? You wanted to be able to tell things apart. Okay, so remember that part. And some people claim it all started with the King Ranch, which if you know anything about Texas, the King Ranch is bigger than Rhode Island. So we're going to talk about a modern definition of brand. It's not a logo. A lot of people think that's a brand. No. It's not an identity system. Color system, anybody from AI, you learn about identity systems, graphic designers, right? Brand is not a product. A bar of soap is not a brand. It's not, and this is huge. It's part of our social currency, which I'll explain, and it's not as simple as it looks. Okay? And the key is knowing what the marketing problem is, right? Branding relates to the problem in the marketplace that exists. Okay? This is what branding is. It's a gut feeling. Right? It's how you feel. Are there products you love and products you hate? Right? Brands you love, brands you hate? Right? I know for me, there's certain brands I don't ever want to touch. You know? And there are other ones that I'm all over. Right? There's certain brands that I really like. I like BMWs. It's one of my favorite cars. When I had BMW, it was great to drive. It's a lot of fun. You know, there's other cars that I don't like so much. And it's because we're emotional and intuitive, right? So a person's gut feeling is defined by the individuals. We would call it the marketplace. And if you think about it, it's a gut feeling, it's emotion, it's like friendship or love. Not everybody's going to be your friend, not everybody's going to love you. This is key. Brand's not what you say it is. It's what the consumers. You can say anything you want, right? People do that. Think of people, right? They say, oh, I'm a great leader, or I'm this, and then the rest of us behind their back are going, you're kidding, really? Branding is about love and passion. Think about people with Apple products. I did a bunch of focus groups for Microsoft a couple of years back, and we went around and we interviewed people who use laptops, people who use PCs. We separated men and women. We IT people, IS people, which are different from IT people, and then people of all different skill levels. And then we started interviewing people that were Mac users. More Mac users than not brought their computer with them. And they would tell you about their Mac and how they love their Mac. Some of them named their Mac. And people do that with cars too, right? They name them. That love, that passion, right? Not many products can say that, right? It's about charisma, right? All of these brands have some sort of charisma, right? There's something that draws you to these brands where you go, wow, that's awesome. And there's something when you see these that you go, wow, I'm settling, right? Not everybody, but for most people. For every brand, you're going to find somebody, oh, you know, Van Heusen, awesome, right? But I mean, there are going to be those people, but the majority aren't going, wow, you know, I'm just dying for waiting for that new off-white Van Heusen shirt to come out. That's just going to incredible. Good brands and personalities. This is no different. Some people are, oh, this is so creative. Really, this is no different than Morris the cat, Tony the tiger, right? What's great about this guy is he's friends with this guy, right? So we like him. He's not mean to him, always wants to help him, and feels bad for his friend. When people talk about this campaign, they talk about PC is Mac's friend, right? And poor PC, right? We feel compassion for him. We don't want to be him. We don't want to hang out with him, right? More people are going, hey, I'm over here because we're cool, right? We don't want to be the nerd over here, right? And granted, there are people who are very passionate about PC. There are. They even created a campaign on YouTube where they have a guy in about a $2,000 suit standing there typing on a laptop, and he comes in with his hoodie up, smoking some weed, and he says, hey, PC, what are you doing, dude? And PC says, paying the bills, balancing the checkbook, doing the things that responsible adults do. Which, if you think about it, that's an awesome thing, right? But people were passionate enough to do that. And he asked Mac what he's doing. He goes, smoking a doober, making a calendar for my mom. You know, which fits a stereotype, right? And they're you know, and people did those. Not an ad agency, not some people who were passionate about the PC. There are a small group, right? But more are passionate here. Because they did a great job of framing the issue, didn't they? Didn't they? Now, people try to knock them off, right? You look at her, she's cold, right? We like him. Most people, this campaign does not work at the level this does, right? She watches him get mugged in one of the, and stands there.
Well, yeah, what's that?
That's T-Mobile. She's a T-Mobile gal. And so she stands there and watches terrible things happen to him and doesn't even offer, you know, should I get some help? She just stands there, keeps talking about how wonderful T-Mobile is and how bad AT&T or Verizon, whichever one she's trying to pick on. But it doesn't work to the same level because the relationship's not there and we don't feel passion for her. She's stiff and cold. One of the huge important concepts in branding, and I'm sure we have some psychology people in the room, there's lots of ways you can look at yourself, right? But one of the common ways is how you see yourself is one way, how others see you is another, and the third is the ideal self, right? And the ideal self has to do with how you would like to be on your best day. Okay? What you think you are on your best day. You know, you ever have those really great days where everything seems to go right? Everything comes together once in a while? That's those ideal self days. So your self-image is made up of a lot of things. Where you live, where you worship, where you hang out, right? What you do, your work, job title, your friends, your family, okay, and your stuff. A lot of the psychology literature talks about almost half of how you perceive yourself has to do with your stuff. The car you drive, the clothes you choose to put on, okay? Who you hang out with has a big impact. Okay, where you work, your job title has an effect, right? That's why some people, when they get high enough up, they start viewing themselves as their jobs. And that's why when high-level people get fired or laid off many times, or high profile like Junior Seau, they don't desire to live anymore. They lose their identity. Okay? So something that's important in branding is aesthetics. Aesthetics is a big deal. Okay? Now there's congruity, which is we wouldn't expect her on that bike, would we? That's incongruity, right? And that's a very important concept in branding. Now, incongruity causes us to want new stuff. Now, we don't remain the same throughout our entire life, do we? Right? So what you want, what you desire, how you feel about things changes over time, doesn't it? There was this 18th century French philosopher that wrote this treatise about somebody gave him a new dressing gown. And he got a new dressing gown, and because he got this new dressing gown, he had to change everything in his bedroom. Because the old dressing gown fit with everything, with the comforter on his bed and the curtains and some of his other clothes. And because he was changing the dressing gown, it was going to require him to change. Now, in a fictional scenario, if someone would move to, say, Seattle from, say, Portland, and they brought their furniture into a different house, someone's wife might go, this doesn't work in this house. We're going to have to get new furniture, right? And that's sort of the same effect, right? Or what happens is, as you grow and you change, right, and you hang out with different people, you start wanting to fit in, because we all want to fit in and get along at some point, right? You want to stand out, but not too much, right? If you stand out too much, you're considered out there, right? So we want to fit in, right? If you go over and look at Microsoft engineers, you go in the engineering department, you will not see suits and ties. You'll see sneakers, right? And maybe khakis, jeans, shorts, more likely, short sleeve shirts, right? You go over to the marketing department where Felicia is, you will see most of the people in ties and jackets, and the women's in dresses and suits, right? Because they have to fit in, right? If an engineer gets moved into marketing, they change the way they dress. And I've seen that, and it happens throughout. When I worked on Madison Avenue, you know, a nice suit was the dress of the day every day. And typically it was not just, you know, like a Burlington suit. You had to have a fairly nice suit because you had to impress the client, and part of that was the image of the agency and the image of the business you were in. So as you go through these jobs and these processes, those things change. Where when I was first hired as a creative, I don't even know that I owned a tie. So it changes what your needs are and what you want, right? So part of figuring out branding is who you want to associate with and who you don't, right? And I'm sure these are the guys we'd be associating with, and we'd be really scared of these people. But there are groups we want to associate with. There's groups we disassociate with, right? And there's groups we aspire to be like, or at least somewhat like a certain part. And what's important is that we do recognize that we do that. And in the literature, they tend to call disassociative groups outgroups, right? And outgroups can have multiple effects on branding. There are some outgroups that we're compassionate towards, right? There's outgroups that we just say, oh, you know, they're a little different, they're all right. Don't necessarily want to hang out with them, but they're fine, right? And there's other outgroups like the Ku Klux Klan where you just go, you know, I want nothing to do with these people, they're nuts, right? Just leave them out there. And so you have to begin to understand the relationships of how they fit in. Now, Starbucks has a lot to do with aspiration groups. They target people with an average income over $100,000. There's a whole big description about their target audience. Income's a small piece of it. But the minute you know that, you know they're in the 0.5%. Once you hit 100,000, you're in less than 0.5% of all wage earners in the U.S. So it's a very tiny, small percentage, and they target that group because many people aspire to have some of the things those people have. Okay? So as your life evolves, when you're a youngin' and you get that first car, this is awesome. This is the greatest car ever, right? But, you know, when you get bumped to be a vice president or wherever, if you move up in your career and everybody's driving luxury cars, that's probably where you're going to head. Just to fit in, this won't be so awesome anymore. And a bunch of research has been done on, there's interesting research on brand experience. And brand experience actually becomes more important in some instances than the product itself. And that's when the product's great. Everything's great with the product and everything's working in the marketplace. The brand experience is your purchasing experience and all the experience you have throughout the life of the brand. The contacts with customer service, everything, right? If it's a car, it could be service, it could be all those things. Now, your experience, if your purchasing experience is a good one, and this is huge for fashion, if your purchasing experience is a good one, you're more likely to go back to that retail outlet and shop again and again and again. Because experiences, when they're good, are typically short in length, the actual experience. So all you remember is a good piece. The products wear out. So if the product ties back to a good experience, I get to have this fun again when this wears out. Do you see how that would tie?
Isn't it like in anthropology where they said shoppers spend an hour and a half?
Right. Anthropology is a store, a women's clothing store. And yeah, I did a research thing for them one time. And we found out the average woman spent like an hour and 40 minutes in a store that's not very big. It's not like a Macy's. I mean, it's more like not even as big as a Limited. You know, it's more like a Gap kind of size. And you wonder how people spend several hours in that store. And it's just, they created a process that's enjoyable for the women that they target to be there. And it's a unique shopping concept if you look at it. So their product is important, but what happens is this deals with congruity or alignment. And as you change in your life, your needs, wants, desires change. And that becomes important. You know, when you first move out of the house, the dorm room's pretty cool, even though it's like, you know, this big, right? Because you're free. But then you want an apartment, and then eventually you want a house of some sort. And that's your aesthetics changing. And when that changes, right, when you go from each of those spaces, you need different things. Like we said, we love products. We personify products. We do. We look at products and we judge products much the same way we judge people. We judge services, products much the same way we judge people. In psychology for years, they have identified these as 5 basic personalities that make up the typical Western consumer. Now, these personalities also related in brands, is what they found out. They took the psychology literature from over here and moved it over here. And they said, you know, certain brands are sincere, certain are exciting, certain are rugged. Sincerity, pretty much what we expect. Sincere brand, Disney, right? Excitement, exciting brands, right? Burton's exciting. Xbox can be exciting, right? Some brands you can look at multiple ways. So what you have to do is look at your target audience and say, where does it fit with them? What is it they're buying? Remember, we got to go back to what they're buying. Nobody's buying what you're selling. How do you get back there? And then how does this enhance who they believe they are, right? Because your stuff helps you identify who you are, okay? Ruggedness. 2 brands you'd expect. You could put Carhartt up here or several others. Competence, right? FedEx, when absolutely positively has to be there, right? We trust, when you think of overnight, you think of FedEx. Sophistication, right? Look at what a great job these guys have done. You don't need a logo. They have basically identified themselves with a color. And when you see that color on a box, guys might not know it, but women, every woman will definitely know that color. Hands down. Okay? So it's all about congruency, okay? Or alignment, right? This is an easy way to understand it. We all do this. We've all done this at the store, right? My wife has tried to introduce colors to me because in New York I wore a black suit, a blue suit, and occasional gray suit. And I had 54 suits in 3 colors, if you can believe that. And I had white shirts, and then I had white shirts and white shirts. And I had blue, yellow, and red ties. Getting dressed was so easy because all I had was black socks. They were all the same gold toe black socks too. So if you lost one, it paired up with the next one that went off wherever they go hiking or whatever. Go to Europe for the summer, I'm not sure. But for me, that was very simple. And when she started getting me colors, and colors, and brown pants, me, it's like, I said I would never. Right, first time she put them on me, I stood out, it's not me. Were you kidding? And she put me in a brown suit, and she said, it's not brown, it's tan. Oh, that makes it better. Okay. It took me a long time. I never owned brown shoes either. I had brown shoes on. I mean, it's a big stretch. We do this all the time. This isn't me. This doesn't work for me. Right? You go in the store. That doesn't work. That's not my look. Right? And it's important because you are identified by how you look. Right? We expect you to look a certain way. If you are way out of character, you're going to cause some confusion. People are going to look at you. Even sometimes simple changes. I shaved my mustache. Hadn't been off for 17 years. A couple of people at school were like, Tim, whoa, what's wrong? And it was a simple change. Right? Congruency, it's all about how you see yourself or how you want to be perceived. Right? You get stuff that helps say who you are, right? If you're in a job where you're an account rep for something that's very expensive, right? You're selling some high-end service of some kind to most businesses. Now, if you're going to a construction site, I could understand why you'd wear jeans or something. That might make sense. But you'd probably still show up in a suit if you were selling, say electrical services to the general contractor. Right? If you're selling $1 million products, if you showed up in like shorts and a t-shirt, what are they going to think? You don't like to think we all stereotype, but we do. You're going to size that person up, and the next one that comes in a suit, you're going to say, well, that company has their stuff more together, right? Because you are the brand contact point. You represent the company at that point. Every time you go out, every time you talk to somebody or there's some communication or some contact, you are part of that brand. And if you're not in alignment with the rest of the company, you start to distort the brand. And who the brand is becomes unclear. So if a brand is not focused typically on one thing, it becomes unclear. And then we have a tougher time deciding who it is. If we were looking for somebody and we were at a Seahawks game and Wayne and I were walking around and we'd say, oh, remember that redhead in the short skirt? We probably could find her. But if we said, remember the redhead in the blue dress with the black purse and the orange shoes? And when you start throwing all that stuff out there, we start overcomplicating. Our minds want simple, easy, boom, that's what we're looking for. You want something that's distinct, that's a benefit to you. Okay? Because remember, it's all about me. It's what I perceive, not what you actually put out there. Right? There's a rule in marketing that the best product rarely wins the day. Right? It's the one that consumers perceive best. So brand touch points, right, has a lot to do with product design and functionality. Right? Mercedes used to produce what was called a baby Benz, the 190. And they quit producing it because it was a really low-end car and it didn't feel like a Mercedes. And the higher-end Mercedes people were like, it starts to damage the brand. Right? What happened to Perry Ellis? Perry Ellis used to make, $1,500 suits and $300 shoes, and now they're in Ross because he created a low-end brand. You ever see Perry Ellis anywhere else?
What happened?
They went down into Ross.
That was their choice?
That they created a lower end Perry Ellis America brand. No one separated them. Okay, what's the hotel? Crown Plaza, right? It used to be Holiday Inn Crown Plaza. It was failing miserably because a whole lot of people could not see themselves going, I want to pay $300 a night for a room in the Holiday Inn. That even feels wrong, doesn't it? You get $300 a night at the Crown Plaza, no problem. Right? You don't get $300 a night at the Holiday Inn Crown Plaza. Right? Because it's perception. So if you take your brand down or create a discount part of your brand, typically you're associated with the lowest level of your brand. And the higher end people will run away. Victoria's Secret ran into that problem. In the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, Victoria's Secret sold very expensive ladies' clothes, mostly to professionals. A lot of suits, they had shoes, they had the undergarments, but it was high end. And then they came out with the Dream Angels in the late 80s. They had all of a sudden alienated those women. They were selling to upper income women who were paying $400 or $500 for a suit, $125 for a pair of shoes, and now they're showing 20-year-olds half-dressed. And if you're a 45, 50-year-old professional, you're going, that's not me, that's not my store, I'm out of here. And that's exactly what happened. They lost, and they had to shift their whole product line and everything young. They thought they could do both. Because Wall Street pressures you to be all things to all people. And what you end up is nothing to anyone. Okay? Your packaging's a big deal. Point of sale, advertising, and PR and social medias, many times they're first touch points. And it's very important that you're on top of that, so because people will talk about you if you don't frame your own message. Now, this is from an article about package design, and what they talked about was, you probably can't see that very well, but there's a sort of a, it's called Temptress. So she's a temptress on the package, and she did not come out, that wine did not come out as being very sincere. Well, we'd say, what a surprise. But here's what they were tying into is how the package design is important to branding and the concept of congruity. So Sawtooth was sincere. Chateau Legrand, of course, competence, where Punk Floyd was not seen as competent. They also took some of the descriptions and said, well, you know, this is sophisticated and that's competent, and they went through, depending on sizes and shapes, how people perceive them and how that was important because it tied back to the brand personality. What it comes down to is we have too many choices. Okay? Most products you go out there are too many choices, and we all perceive things to be similar. You just go, oh. And when you see this in the laundry detergent aisle, you go for what you know. Typically, our brain remembers two. Okay? Typically, you remember the number one, number two in the marketplace, Coke and Pepsi, right? McDonald's, Burger King. A third one may slip in there, but typically, if you're not number one or number two, you're not a choice. And I tell people all the time who are down the list, you're not a choice. You're not even in their list when they're making decisions. You need to find a way. And if this doesn't work, what you have to do is create a new category. Okay, the Widmer brothers created a new category, right? And there's a story I tell. Who was the first person to fly across the Atlantic? Anybody? Lindbergh, right? So Lindbergh flies across the Atlantic. We all know him. The second guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but some people know him. There was this guy, Emil Earhart, walking around in New York, Emil, and he's going, if I fly across the Atlantic, I'll be the third guy. No one will know who I am. So he went in, got a sex change, became Amelia Earhart, the first woman, and flew across the Atlantic. And so Amelia Earhart was the first woman. We all know her name. Now, I lied about the sex change, but it makes you remember the story. So, but the point is, the Widmer brothers did the same thing. They said, we can't compete with Budweiser, Coors, Miller. What we have to do is we will create a premium beer. We will create a gourmet beer and call it a microbrew. Instead of being $12 for a case, we're 24. And we're going to create a cloudy beer so it looks different. We're going to steal it from Germany, Hefeweizen. We're going to make this cloudy beer. People are going to pay twice as much for it, and it's going to be gourmet. California Pizza Kitchen did it. They said, you know, we don't want to play everybody else's sandbox. We're going to make pizza with broccoli on it and white sauce and chicken and weird stuff that guys don't eat. So, right? So this, in many categories, especially when you get into bigger services, right? People have not staked out their position. There isn't a clear number one or number two, right? In many of these sort of big product categories, there's not a clear number one or number two. I mean, we have people here from Waste Management. If I asked any of you, you know, garbage is garbage is garbage. Who would agree with that? Are you really familiar with who your hauler is? Right? No one staked out a position. No one said, here's who we are. Here's how we're different. Here's why you should want us. Right? No one really knows. Internally, the company can tell you all kinds of things. Right? Waste Management could tell you, you know, the plastic that a lot of these tables and other things are made out of, we can turn this back into petroleum that'll burn clean. No one else can do that. Do we know that? No, we don't know that. Because all we notice is differences. We need a difference that benefits us, right? Enhances who we are, makes them feel better about themselves by being associated with us. Mac has done a great job of having people become friends with their computer, right? They hug their computer and they're, oh, love my computer, right? This is key, right? We all want different things. So you can't be all things to all people. You have to understand, where should you focus your energy? Where is the one point where you can stand out, where you're going to be memorable? And a big mistake companies make is they make that point abstractly. And if you make your point abstractly, not something I can grab onto, nothing tangible, I'm going to define it, or even more so, I'm lazy and I'm not going to bother to define it, and I'll just move on because I'm busy and I really don't care about what you do. Right? I want to know what you do for me. So the bottom line is, your difference must be a benefit and congruent with your audience's self-image. How do I help the people enhance who they believe they are? Right? How does it tie in? How does it align with their belief system? People are time poor, we can't tell things apart, and we tend to base our buying choices on trust. One of the things that's fairly new and fairly hot, and it's really not all that new. It's from probably the 90s, but it's just getting written about now. It's something that I'd like to think we've always thought of on Madison Avenue, is a lot of times people talk about demographics, psychographics, maybe, behaviors, maybe. But really, once you do your demographics, psychographics, behaviors, I think you need to do them all. You look at outcomes. Make sure everybody's buying what you think they're buying, not what you're selling, right? Now you segment by what they're buying, right? And what's the strongest associative group? Now, this is huge. Not everybody who buys your stuff or goes in your store is your target audience. Your target audience is 2 or 3% at most of everybody that uses your service, right? Usually they're aspiration groups. people we want to be like. Right? People you look up to, because that will attract more people. I used to always say your marketing dollars are like a bucket of water. And the target audience is like Manhattan Island. And you have a bucket of water and you're on the World Trade Center. I'm old and I grew up in New York, so my mind, it's still there. So you're standing on the World Trade Center. You can try to make everybody wet. They won't feel a thing. You can soak down a couple loud people who are positive people who will be happy about it, and they'll let a whole lot of other people know, hey, I got wet, and your story will grow. But if you try to reach too broadly, you won't reach anybody. So relationships are based on trust. Trust is easy to lose. Trust means you got to show up. You've got to deliver. You should over-deliver, right? And make sure your customers are happy. That's about it. Well, thank you.